Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today for this short lecture on diversity in the entertainment industry. My name is Zeki Barak Hamid. I am a part-time faculty member at Everett Community College. I teach Intro to Mass Media. And I'm also the Director of Community Engagement at KUOW Public Radio, which is the NPR station in the Seattle area. So before we get into this lecture about diversity in the entertainment industry and specifically in film, this is what we're going to be concentrating on. I just want to give you a little bit of background about me. So I'm a Palestinian American. I come from a family of Palestinian refugees, even though I was born and raised in Amman, Jordan, which is in the Middle East. Um, uh, so I finished high school in Amman in Jordan, and then I went to Beirut, Lebanon for a couple of years to go to the American University of Beirut. But in 1994, I got an incredible opportunity to emigrate to the United States. We had put in immigration papers back in 1982, and by 1994, we were finally approved and the paperwork was in order, and we were able to come here. So when we did, we went to upstate New York. And at first, I started to get odd jobs here and there just to get my life on track. And then I became a product of the community college system. I went to a community college called Hudson Valley Community College, got enough credits there to transfer to a four-year university, the University at Albany. It's part of the SUNY system. We just called it SUNY Albany. And I got my degree in theater. And when I graduated there, that was graduated in the year 2000, I was lucky enough to get a full fellowship to go to the University of Delaware to get my master's degree in classical theater. So that is really my educational background. I graduated with an MFA in acting. I worked at Shakespeare festivals and a lot of other theaters around the country. I did some TV and film as well when I was in New York. But then I moved to the Seattle area in 2006. And at that point, I had decided to leave the theater career behind, at least the acting part of it. Somebody once told me it is a wonderful way to live, but it's a terrible way to make a living. And that was very, very true. And then I started going, my career took different turns until I ended up in journalism. I've been doing journalism for a few years now. As I said, I work as the Director of Community Engagement at KUOW Radio. But there are two through lines throughout my different careers and the different jobs that I've had, which is one, the concentration on community and community relations. So that's always been present in everything that I've been doing. And also the concentration on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I deeply believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's been present throughout in my work throughout my career so far. So let's talk about this lecture is going to concentrate on diversity in the entertainment industry. But before we get to that, I just want to read some demographics. We're going to look at the demographics of our country to get us to understand where we are. By the way, if you see me looking off to the side a little bit, that's just me looking at my notes. That's what's going on. So I want to start with some demographics. I want to talk about something that the US Census calls the Diversity Index. The Diversity Index measures the probability that two people chosen at random are going to be from different race and ethnicity groups. Okay, so I'm going to give these probabilities in percentages and show how they've changed, especially over the course of the last 10 years. So in the year 2010, the diversity index for the entire US was 54.9%. Again, the diversity index of the entire US in 2010 was 54.9%, which means that in 2010, there was a 54.9% chance that two people chosen at random in the US were going to be from different race and ethnicity groups. Make sense? Now, fast forward to 2020, that probability now is 61.6%, which means now that there is a 61.6% chance that two people chosen at random are going to be from different race and ethnicity groups. So it's gone up, right? Because our country is becoming more and more diverse, every year. In 2010, the white population was 63 6.7%. The Black population was 12.2%. Hispanic or Latino was 16.3%, and Asian was 4.7%. Fast forward to 2010, look what happened. The white population has shrunk to now 57.8%. So it went from 63 to 57. The Black population was almost unchanged. It was at 12.1%. Hispanic or Latino rose to 18.7%, and Asian rose to 5.9%. Another interesting thing about these demographics, the category of two or more races, so somebody who's multiracial, in 2010, it was only 1.9%, and in 2020, it was 4.1%. So that's a significant rise when you think about it. So all of that to say is that we live in a very diverse country, and it's getting more and more diverse each year. People that study demographic estimate that we will become something called a majority minority country by the year 2040, which means that people of color as a collective will outnumber people who are white. There are several cities around America that are minority majority cities. Bellevue in Washington state, in our own state, is one of those. And I also do believe that California is now a minority majority state as well. So all of that to say is that our country is very, very diverse, and it just keeps on getting more diverse year after year. Great. So now I'm going to talk about some statistics specifically about the entertainment industry, specifically about the film industry and diversity in the film industry. I'm taking them from really two places here. There's one called the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, which is the leading think tank in the world studying diversity and inclusion in entertainment through original research and sponsored projects. I'm also going to get some statistics from the Hollywood Diversity Report. This is an annual report that examines the relationships between diversity and the bottom line in the Hollywood entertainment industry. All right, so I'm going to go ahead here and share my screen and look at this PowerPoint here. All right. Oops. Excellent. All right, let's look at some of these statistics. We're going to talk about inequality. This is part of the Annenberg report, inequality in 1,300 popular films. So what we see here is that the prevalence of girls and women as speaking characters rose across the prevalence of girls and women as speaking characters across 1,300 films in the percentages. And you can see this is measuring films from 2007 up until 2019. And you can see that the percentage of speaking roles for women has rose a little bit, right? It's not a whole lot, but you look at that 12%, the percentage of 1,300 films with balanced casts, gender balanced casts, right? 12%. That's not a very big number, obviously. So you can see that men vastly outnumber women when it comes to speaking roles in Hollywood films. So this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about gender. We're going to talk about race as well. So far, when you analyze all of these films between 2007 and 2019, only 12% of casts are considered balanced between men and women, and the ratio of males to females is 2.2 to 1, all right, almost double there. So not a whole lot of progress there in terms of speaking roles in general. However, we have made some good progress for women as lead characters. Of the top 100 films in 2019, 43 of them depicted a girl or a woman as a lead or a co-lead, right? That's a decent number there. Of those 43, 17 female actors were from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups, but only 3 are female actors or at least 45 years of age or older. So far, we're making progress with women having lead or co-lead roles. but we have a little bit of ways to go, definitely, on having them come from underrepresented racial ethnic groups, but we have a lot of work to do when it comes to age. So that's, I think, is a really stark number. And if you think about it, most of the lead characters who are women are young, right? So there's definitely an age bias that we can look at there. So now we're going to talk about the inclusion of racial and ethnic groups on screen in 2019. In 2019, the percentage of all speaking characters by racial ethnic group, the majority, goes to white folks, 65.7%. As you can see, the Black role or Black speaking characters, 15.7, Hispanic or Latino and Asian have a really long way to go there. They are definitely underrepresented, especially when you think of the demographics of the state of our country right now. But however, we have made some progress this year for underrepresented characters at the center of storytelling. The number of films with underrepresented leads or co-leads by year. So you look at that. In 2007, only 13 roles went to underrepresented characters. But in 2019, 32. So there's progress that we're starting to make here, with speaking roles, people on screen. And you can kind of tell for yourself, even if you're not just watching movies, if you're just watching television, you're seeing the number of people who come from underrepresented racial groups is definitely rising. So there's some good news on that front. Now, let's look at LGBTQ characters. They are definitely left behind in film. Of 26,618 speaking characters across 600 films. You see in those years from 2014 to 2019, a very, very, very little speaking characters with either gay or lesbian or bisexual, and transgender is almost non-existent. So there's a huge disparity in terms of representation for LGBTQ characters in film. There's just a really huge disparity. We have a long, long way to go on that one. Now, if you look at characters with disabilities, same thing. We have it's a really, really low percentage. Only 2.3% of all speaking characters were depicted with a disability in 2019. So 65% of those had a physical disability, 29% a cognitive disability, and 28% a communicative disability. So the representation of characters with disabilities is almost non-existent. So that's really something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so that's the data for people on screen. Okay, so what about people behind the camera? Let's look at the director's chair and gender. Females are definitely outnumbered in the director's chair, right? In 2019, only 10.6% of films were directed by a woman. The percentage of female directors across all 13 years from 2007 to 2019, 4.8%. Think about that. That is a shockingly low number. So I'm going to give you a quick test. Try to name 3 female directors right now. I'll give you a second. Okay. Now think about 3 male directors. One is a lot easier than the other, right? Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is there are not a whole lot of women directors that are out there. That door has been slammed shut in the face of women for so long, even though we're starting to make that kind of little progress, but it's tiny compared to these numbers. But it's not like these, films that were directed by men are better than the films that are directed by women, when you look at the Metacritic scores by film director gender, there's almost no difference. In the median and the average Metacritic scores, they are almost identical. So we're seeing from all of these reviews that the films are directed by men and the films are directed by women, on average, are getting the same kind of critic scores. So it's not like one is better than the other. Now, let's look at directors, underrepresented directors by year. Overall, from 2007 to 2019, the number of directors that come from underrepresented communities, meaning directors of color, essentially, only 13.5%, right? Again, a very shockingly low number. And yet again, it's not like films are directed by white folks are better than the films are directed by people of color. The Metacritic scores are almost identical again. This slide here, I think is great. Gender and underrepresented status of film directors. This gives you the whole picture. So if you look at the total percentage of films from 2007 to 2019, 82.5% of those films were directed by white males. 3.9% were directed by white females. Underrepresented males, saying basically males of color, 12.6%. And underrepresented females, less than 1%. So women of color are just simply not getting anywhere near the opportunities that are provided to other groups when it comes to directing films in Hollywood. One other thing here I want to talk about is also writing, right? This is from the Hollywood Diversity Report. Writers by race. Like you look at these from 2011 to 2019. In 2011, it was 92% of the writers were whites. In 2019, that shrunk a little bit to 86%. And the writers of color in 2019 was 13.9%. Again, a huge disparity. So only 1.4 out of 10 film writers were people of color. So the vast majority of the films that you're seeing are written by white folks as well. And also when you look at the gender, right? Male vastly outnumbers females when it comes to writing. As well. So we have a huge disparity in writers as well. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing here. These are all the statistics that I have. And now we're going to talk about really why all of that is important. But I want to just give you a quick conclusion of what the slides that we just saw. There are gains being made in representation on screen with some groups, mainly women and people of color, which is good, but we have a long way to go with LGBTQ representation and with representation of people with disabilities. Behind the camera, that's a different story. Directors, writers, producers, we have a very long way to go. So now we're going to talk about why does any of this matter? So the TV and film industries are incredibly influential. They really have the power to shape how we think of the world. So I want to give a quote from a writer that I love called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian writer that wrote this incredible book called Americana. I highly recommend that you get it. But she also has a TED Talk called The Dangers of a Single Story. And I would suggest look it up. It is worth your time. It is some of the best 15 minutes that you will spend. Again, her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and the TED Talk is called The Dangers of a Single Story. But in that TED Talk, she says this: it's not that stereotypes are untrue, it's that they are incomplete. I love that. Think about it. It's not that stereotypes are untrue, it's that they are incomplete. So I'm going to talk about, so keep that in mind as we go on with this lecture. So I'm going to talk about how this, the diversity in film affects people from the Middle East, because that's the personal experience that I have. But you can really apply these learnings to a lot of underrepresented groups. See, so there are definitely differences in these experiences, but there are a lot of similarities as well. So there's a writer, an academic that I really admire. His name is Edward Said. And Edward Said wrote a very influential book called Orientalism. He wrote it in the 70s. Edward Said's Orientalism tries to answer the question of why, when we think of the Middle East, we have a preconceived notion of what kind of people live there, what they believe, and how they act, even though they may never have been there or have ever met somebody from there. So Edward Said argues that the way the West looks at the countries and people of the Middle East is through a lens that actually distorts the actual realities of these places and of these people. And that, when you think about it, can be a very, very dangerous thing. So I'm going to give you a couple of stories. These are experiences that I had. So the first one, I'll say that about, it was like 2012 or 2013, something like that. If you remember, there was a movie that came out called American Sniper. And it was about a sniper who was fighting in Iraq during the Iraq War. And it's very much written as this big American hero story. A couple of things about that film. It even got nominated for an Oscar. Not a single character in there, not a single Middle Eastern character was depicted as good. Every single Middle Eastern character in that movie was depicted as evil. And there was a specific scene where the sniper, right, shoots somebody that has a rocket launcher. And then a little kid comes, probably, we're talking 12, 13 years old, and tries, and he's fiddling with this rocket launcher, right? And he's trying to kind of carry it and everything. And the sniper is looking at the kid, and he's muttering to himself, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, meaning that, if he does pick it up and tries to do something with it, that he's going to kill the kid. As I'm looking at this, is deeply emotional for me. I'm looking at this 12, 13-year-old on screen, and, I can see myself in that, character. Not that I was ever in a war zone like that or really fiddled with any kind of weaponry, but I'm just saying that that kid looked like me when I was young. And then I hear this from somebody who's sitting right behind me. I just hear, shoot him. And that's when it really dawned on me. The dangers of having just a single stereotype of a certain people and what that can do to people's minds. We've been fed that Middle Easterners are terrorists and they're evil our entire lives. You see it in film and television the whole time. Whether we're talking about old, action movies like True Lies, which is a fun movie, by the way, but it's completely inaccurate. Or when you're looking at TV and you're seeing, there's all sorts of like Homeland, for example. And so there are all these movies that are just depicting Middle Easterners as evil people. So when that happens and you have that preconceived notion of who these people are, it's easy for you then to make this comment of shoot him, to completely disregard the humanity of a kid on screen and to say that, no, he deserves to die. That's why I think it is dangerous to have these preconceived notions. It's dangerous to just stick to those stereotypes. And then you have to wonder, where do these stereotypes come from? Well, the statistics that we saw say it all. They're only a very small, a specific demographic that is writing movies, that are producing them, that are hiring the directors to do that. So when you exempt a certain demographic from telling their own stories or giving you a little bit of nuance to these stories, then these stories become incomplete. They become just simply stereotypical and incomplete. So that's just one story. I'll give you another one about the examination that I had with my own life and what I wanted to do with it. When I was in New York and I was there, I knew that was it was in the early 2000s, so it was right out, after 9/11. That was the height of film companies and TV hiring people to play terrorists, and I wanted to capitalize on that because I'm an Arab, I'm a Muslim, I speak fluent Arabic, so I went there to simply exploit my ethnicity and see how much money I can make off of it. But then it became extremely humiliating. And a specific incident that I got into, I went for an audition for a movie for this channel called Spike TV. I don't even know if that channel even exists anymore. But they called me in to say, we have this movie. It's going to be a comedy, and it's all about Osama bin Laden hijacking Christmas. That was their Christmas movie. So I was called in to play that role of Osama bin Laden, and at the audition, they're having me do some of the most humiliating things I can think of, right? I mean, they even got me to sing a song instead of Santa Claus is coming to town, Osama is coming to town. And then after that, after I do that audition on camera and they say, hey, do you speak Arabic? It's like, yes, I do. And it's like, all right, so can you do it in Arabic? And I said, yeah, I think I can. And they didn't have any kind of translation for me. So I was sitting there translating it, writing it on a piece of paper, translating this humiliating dialogue into Arabic so that I can do it. And then I just suddenly stopped. And I just said, I can't do this. This is just way too humiliating. And to me, I'm just doing nothing but contributing to how awful the representation of people like me is in Hollywood. And I just got up and I walked away. Now, other people might want to do that kind of work and get paid for it. More power to you. It's a personal choice. My personal choice is I was no longer going to contribute to that kind of humiliation and that kind of dangers towards the Arab community and towards the Muslim communities. Because as I said, TV and film has a really huge influence on how we see the world. And we need to have something that is a little bit more positive, not as a fluff piece, but only to complete the story. So now I'm going to go back to that quote by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie when she said, it's not that stereotypes are untrue, it's that they are incomplete. So I think a lot of the stories that are being told out there are incomplete stories. And for me, I saw that I have a personal responsibility to complete that story and give something a little bit different there. So that's why, in a nutshell, I think diversity in films and on TV are so incredibly important. So as I said, the stereotypes that we see are all incomplete stories. Incomplete stories lead to fear. They lead to suspicion. They lead to division. All you need to think about how Muslims were demonized during the 2016 election. I'm not going to get too much into that, but they were. So we need all of us to tell nuanced stories that get us closer to the truth of our country. That's why I believe diversity in film and TV is so incredibly important. We have way too much division right now. We have too much division because we don't quite know each other, and there's a whole lot of stereotypes, and we're not, cutting through these stereotypes to find the other parts that would complete that story. That's why I think diversity is so incredibly important. By the way, if you want to see some awesome films are directed by women, I'm going to suggest a few directors that you look up. Look up Catherine Bigelow. She's incredible. Sofia Coppola, Ava DuVernay. Oh my God, she has some incredible stuff there. Greta Gerwig is one of my favorites. And I would say check out Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao directed one of the most beautiful films I have ever seen, which won the Oscar last year. It's called Nomadland. Check out Chloe Zhao. She is really, really great. One more recommendation. If you want to see something that gives you a different view of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans, check out the show called Rami, R-A-M-I, Rami. It's on Hulu. It's about a Muslim Egyptian American family in New Jersey. it is hysterical, it is deep, and it just gives you a very different outlook that is definitely not stereotypical. And the reason why that show is so good is because the writers are Arab Americans, the directors are Arab Americans. It is very, very inclusive. And just take a look and see that kind of diversity simply made a show so much better than it could have been. Yeah. Anyway, if you have any questions, all you need to do is send for my class right now, send me a message in Canvas. If you're seeing this for another class, you can just email me at zhamid@everettcc.edu. And thank you so much for listening.